My Lords, my Lords, I've put my name to Amendments 36 and 37 in the amendments in the name of Lord Paddick. As it happens, there's a number of amendments I could have also backed, and I think Lord Paddick explained extremely clearly lots of problems with the sections in this group. The only thing I didn't agree with was when the noble Lord Paddick, and indeed the noble Lord Hayne, has just compared present-day protesters to the suffragettes. I'd just like to point out that the suffragettes were Democrats without the vote, and Just Stop Oil are anti-Democrats with the vote. So I think there is a real distinction there. Although I have very serious reservations about this bill, and I do think it's unnecessary, I think we do, however, need to approach the discussion with a little bit more humility in relation to the discussion and the debate that's going on outside of this House. Earlier in the Group 1 discussion, a number of noble lords raised the point that the country was up in arms about the bill. And I just don't recognise that description, because actually the country, or many people in the country, are up in arms about the Just Stop Oil protesters. And they're up in arms because they're so frustrated that we have people who are ruining their daily lives, getting in the way and so on. And they're frustrated that nothing is being done about it, or not enough is being done about it. And my argument with the government is that, in fact, this is a crisis of policing, and that the government won't tackle the crisis of policing, so they've introduced a whole new set of laws that we don't need. Yeah. Just in terms of the issue around serious disruption, I do understand, and I understand as legislators, the need for definitions. And Lord Hope of Craighead explained the difficulties around what is a definition of serious disruption. But it is the case that the people that we're talking about, who are locking themselves on to and tunnelling and so on, they actually boast that they are seriously disrupting things, because what they say is, what choice have we got? We're involved in serious disruption. They don't actually have a definitional problem. They say we're trying to seriously disrupt the ways of life of everyone until we get our way, until you agree with us. So in some ways, I think it's important that the government don't, however, exploit the fact that we have protesters who say our job is to seriously disrupt the lives of ordinary people completely frustrated that nothing's been done about these people seriously disrupting their lives, and say that we need all these laws, because this is not the solution to that problem. So it's a con, as I said in my Second Amendment speech. But I want, and I think it's a requirement, that the answer is given to the noble Lord Horham's point, which is, if the government's argument is that we haven't got laws on the statute book that can deal with the very specific issues, you have to be very clear about exactly why the laws don't work at present. If it's the Supreme Court, then admit that, say that. But at the moment, there is a muddle on that question, it seems to me. Now, just in terms of serious disruption and the specific amendments, just quickly, I think that as we have protesters, or I think they're more people who indulge in stunts rather than protesters myself, but anyway, that admit that they intend to cause serious disruption, I am concerned, and which is why Amendment 37 is important, that there has to be some intent to cause serious disruption. I thought that the noble Lord Skidelsky made a hugely important point about the way that this idea of reckless is used to kind of clamp down on the idea that your intention is read into it by a reckless indifference or something. That is one of the great ways that censorship is happening in this country. So I'm very nervous about, in a law, actually having a situation where the law can decide that whatever you intend, they will decide that you intended something. That's effectively why I supported Amendment 37. And just on Amendment 36, which is where we would say that we would limit the offence to an act that actually causes serious disruption rather than is capable of causing serious disruption. I think that it is obviously the case that you can't it seems to me at least that you do have to say that if something doesn't cause serious disruption, that it isn't serious disruption. It just seems blatantly ridiculous. I have a bill that says we're going to criminalise something that isn't seriously disruptive because it could be. It's a different time in a different place. I rather liked the example of what happened actually in Germany recently, where some people did lock themselves on in the Volkswagen Museum in Germany, and they didn't cause any serious disruption because the curators went home, turned the lights out and turned the heating off, and left them there. As it happens, the protesters' response to this was to complain that they'd been left in the cold and they couldn't order in food, and they left overnight. Perhaps instead of, draconian and criminalising bills, what we need is a bit more of that kind of attitude, both from the police and from institutions that seem to stand by as disruption occurs and do nothing. But I don't want the law to compensate for that spinelessness either.
Having not spoken